Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the European Policy Center traditional event where we are trying to explain to Serbian society, to citizens of what are the priorities, policy priorities for EU in the next period. We gather here to hear what are the major impressions from the outgoing Cypriot Presidency. They had quite a busy agenda. They did a great job when it comes to enlargement especially. Just to remind you, the Montenegro and the Council formed the ad hoc group for preparation of the accession talk. Albania got IBAR, the first clusters were opened with Moldova and Ukraine. So on that front, obviously a lot of important things have been done. There was a major breakthrough in the discussions on the budget, on the multi-annual financial framework. So there are plenty of things that Cyprus can be proud of. But obviously we are here also to hear what are going to be the priorities of the incoming Irish presidency. It's a country that has a lot of experience that could be very useful, especially for Serbia, but also the rest of the Western Balkan countries. So it's going to be interesting to hear where do we stand. We are obviously in a very interesting moment where enlargement is back in the focus of the EU. We had a flood of new proposals coming out of different member states, think tank community, European Policy Center being one of those. Of how to strengthen and improve, enhance the EU accession strategy, the process itself. So my name is Srđan Majstorović. I'm a chairman of the board of the European Policy Center here in Belgrade. Once again, welcome to our event, which we called From Cyprus to Ireland. So it's a maritime connection, I would say. How to capitalize on another maritime summit, and this is a Tivat summit recently held in Montenegro. I would suggest to start with the person who is representing the EU here in Serbia, with His Excellency Ambassador Andreas von Bekerat, and to ask him exactly about this title that we chose. We had a Tivat summit. We have these range of different non-papers proposing ways how to strengthen and rethink the enlargement policy. How do you explain this? How to put it? How to explain this sudden, or maybe not so sudden, shift into the higher gears when it comes to the enlargement process? And what are your key takeaways from the Tivat summit? How do you address, or rather assess, the various proposals that have emerged in recent months? Andreas, please.
Thank you, Srđan. Thank you so much for inviting me to this discussion. I always enjoy these discussions. It's sort of it puts an end to one presidency and start of the next one. So let me start by congratulating first Andreas and Cyprus for excellent handled presidency, and also wish Kevin and his colleagues at the Irish Embassy all the best of luck. I think actually if there's one thing, and I'm be eager to hear Andreas and Kevin's comments, but I think if there's one thing that connects these two presidencies is the fact that they have spent quite a lot of time on enlargement. And that enlargement has really been, at the top of the agenda for both of these presidencies. Regarding your question, Srđan, I think everything that you mentioned, I mean, the Tivat summit, the flood, as you said, of non-papers and proposals, both from think tanks such as yours and from member states, it all points to one and the same fact, and that is that there really is a momentum when it comes to enlargement. I feel like a parrot repeating this so often, but I'm repeating it because it's actually true. There is a momentum. And I wouldn't say it's sort of a sudden shift into fifth gear. I would say it's much more a gradual sort of enhancement of the importance of enlargement. And it will come as no surprise to you that, you know, it has a lot, if not say all, to do with the world we're living in at the moment. We had the full-scale Russian invasion in 2022, which really, I think, created a sense of urgency among member states. Also, the more geostrategic world we're living in also dawned upon member states. Having capitals realize that the EU needs to enlarge, to become stronger, and to become more competitive on this very sort of strategic competitive arena. We need to become richer and stronger in economic terms, but also in security terms. And for all of these reasons, there was a realization, I think, among member states that we need to accelerate the enlargement process. Now, there are, as you mentioned, there are a lot of different ideas coming out. And I think the main change compared to, let's say, 10 years ago is that 10 years ago there was a slight sense, you know, when it comes to the relation between the EU and Western Balkans, that the EU said that we will pretend to enlarge, and the Western Balkans said we will pretend to reform. And this has now changed, I think, that there is a realization also among Western Balkan countries that if you deliver on reforms, there is a possibility to actually make progress and eventually reach membership in the European Union. And we see that with Montenegro, where we have started the work on the accession treaty. We see that with Albania, which has opened all the chapters. And rest assured, Serbia has all the potential to catch up as well. I mean, Serbia is the richest country in the region. It has, you know, enormous potential when it comes to economy, when it comes to state administration. It can, you know, very easily catch up if political will and reform momentum align. That is the crucial thing. When it comes to the Tivat summit, I think it was yet another concrete realization that there is enlargement momentum right now. Both when it comes to enlargement process, but also when it comes to the growth plan. And I think it's fair to say that the growth plan really is our most powerful tool when it comes to accelerating the enlargement process. As you know, the growth plan is all about offering candidate countries, Western Balkan countries, to move closer to the European Union, not least when it comes to the integration into the single market, and also receive financial benefits, provided that the implementation of the reform agenda is done. And I always repeat the fact also that the reform agenda that Serbia is working on is something that Serbian authorities have decided by their own. It's their own reform agenda that we now expect them to implement. And just to give you a few numbers when it comes to the growth plan, which I think is quite sort of significant. 675 million have been delivered in terms of investments. For example, high-speed internet for 75,000 households, electrification for railways and preschool places. We've had SEPA, the Single European Payment Area, which is now also extended to Serbia, and when properly implemented by banks, will have a huge impact, both for private citizens and for companies, in terms of speed to make transactions and not least the cost, which will be a fraction of what it used to be. And the overall cost savings for this region will be up to 1 billion euro when properly implemented. Another important program is the Discover EU, which gives the possibility for young people in the Western Balkans to travel Europe, which I think is incredibly important. And then obviously, as you know, we have the Rome Like Home, which will make it possible to have the same roaming fees when you're abroad as you have when you're in Serbia. And the Roam Like Home, I'm mentioning this because this was really something, when I talk to my friends who are completely uninterested in the European Union, if there's one thing they mention when they say why they're still pro-EU, it's the Roam Like Home thing. And now they're just waiting for also to be able to watch Netflix also in other countries. When it comes to and I'm mentioning this about, you know, the visibility and the importance of reaching out to citizens through the SEPA, through the Roam Like Home, because I think at the end of the day, the success of enlargement will depend on our ability to explain both to Serbian citizens the benefits of Serbia's future within the European Union, concrete benefits, as well as when it comes to values and principles, but also on us being able to explain to our own citizens why enlargement benefits people in the European Union. So I think that will be really key in order to have this session in a few years' time and being much closer to Serbia joining the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I think the key point was the importance of Serbia's capacity to catch up, but also this capacity is heavily influenced by the existing or lack of political will, and this is unfortunately what we are experiencing. Now, in this ambassadorial environment, obviously the rule of the importance of being earnest is being translated in the importance of being Andreas. So from one Andreas to the other, His Excellency Andreas Fotiu. Your Excellency, I mentioned a couple of key successes, I would say, achievements during your presidency, but would you like to expand, and what would you highlight as the key achievements during your presidency, and what proved to be perhaps the most challenging? This is also extremely important for Serbian citizens to understand that it's not exclusively about Serbia, it's not exclusively about the enlargement, but it's also about how EU works these days and how consensus, and this what your namesake talked about, the necessity to keep Europe strong and cohesive within is important for the everyday functioning of the EU. Please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you. Thank you for hosting us. Indeed, our presidency took place during an exceptionally demanding period. We had to navigate multiple crises simultaneously while ensuring that the Council continued to function effectively and deliver on its legislative, mainly legislative, but also political agenda. And I think that was the main objective, to make sure that the Council continues to function effectively during these difficult times. So I think we did well in maintaining unity and continuity in this period of geopolitical uncertainty. Our objective was to facilitate consensus among the member states on a wide range of legislative files and policy priorities, always acting as honest brokers. And this comes also as a confirmation that sometimes, and I think I can say it, smaller member states without a strong national agenda can sometimes achieve results. They can be a little bit more results-oriented. And these...
deal brokers.
Deal brokers, yeah. Our motto from the very beginning was an autonomous union open to the world. And our presidency program was structured around 5 pillars, and we're happy to conclude that we delivered meaningful results across all 5. Some of the key deliverables that you have asked for. Okay, let me say first the next budget, the next multi-annual financial framework We achieved our goal of presenting a mature negotiating box with figures and securing a partial general approach on the key financial instruments and of course on other sectoral proposals. So now it's up to our Irish friends to carry on and finish the job. On security and defense, we delivered concrete progress, including through the implementation of SAFE with financial assistance decisions for 18 member states and the advancement of the military mobility agenda. On migration, we delivered an agreement on the returns regulation and oversaw the entry into application of the Pact on Migration and Asylum, marking an important milestone towards a more effective, balanced and sustainable migration framework. And of course, enlargement, that also Andreas referred to a few minutes ago, a policy which was a strategic priority for the Cyprus Presidency. And of course, the enlargement remains the Union's most successful soft power tool, an instrument for promoting peace and stability across our continent. And indeed, we had some significant concrete results when it comes to enlargement. You mentioned it in the beginning in your introduction, the accession negotiations with Ukraine, Moldova, and the first IGCs, Albania, with the IBAR, and the opening of all chapters. Montenegro closing 4 chapters, setting up the ad hoc working group for the drafting of the accession treaty, and more chapters are underway, already being discussed in the pipeline for closing rather soon. And these developments in the enlargement policy in connection with the Tivat summit that you referred to prove that the EU is delivering. The EU is delivering when reforms take place, when the applicants, when the negotiating countries deliver. And this is our main message to all candidates, that they should grasp this opportunity, the momentum in the enlargement process, and deliver on the reforms that they know very well, they know what to do, and thus inject some new energy in their own respective accession negotiations. At the same time, of course, our presidency was inevitably shaped by the developments beyond the EU's borders. We still have the continued instability in our neighborhood in the Middle East, the evolving relations and the transatlantic relations with the US, and the broader geopolitical tensions required constant attention and flexibility. I think the main conclusion of this is that a rotating presidency cannot resolve every crisis, of course, by itself, but it can help ensure that the European Union remains united, responsive, and capable of taking decisions. That, I believe, is what we try to do, and to some big extent, I think we successfully managed to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would take from your contribution the part where you said EU delivers when candidates deliver. It's all about the credibility of the EU, of the due process of the accession, and we can see that, as you rightfully pointed out, in the cases of Albania, Montenegro. I would add even Moldova, who is really showing a clear political commitment to speed up its EU accession process. But unfortunately, yes, it is limited to those countries, this political willingness. Now we will move to incoming presidency and the unique ambassador, which is not called Andreas, but Kevin Colgan. His Excellency is among the youngest ambassadors in this country due to a recently opened permanent representation. Your Excellency, you are entering, or rather you are starting the new rotating presidency cycle, as your predecessor just mentioned, together with Lithuania and Greece, if I'm correct. So the agenda is quite busy, but please share with us what are the key priorities of your presidency, and please try to explain where does enlargement policy features in this agenda, how it is important for the island itself. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And to be called the youngest ambassador here in Belgrade, I think is stretching the truth just a little bit. We're the youngest probably embassy here in Belgrade, but I hope my staff recognize that I'm the youngest ambassador. Just to, as I start off, just to congratulate Cyprus on a very successful presidency in a very difficult time and uncertain time. And those times continue. And Ireland takes up the presidency in a time when the world has been the most uncertain that I remember from my 35 years in diplomacy. We're honored to take up the presidency again. This will be our first presidency in the second half of the year. So usually we finish our presidencies with nice summer meetings in Dublin. Now you'll have to come to Dublin in December and see our Christmas at the end of the year. Our presidency will focus on three main areas, and there's a lot of commonality between the Cypriot Presidency and our presidency. And it's not just that we're small island nations and living on the sea, but our three priorities will be competitiveness, values, and security. In terms of competitiveness, we know that Europe has to compete in the world. It's a very competitive environment in which Europe is in. We will want to see Europe strengthen its ability to be competitive and compete in a very difficult environment. We will look to strengthen Europe's capacity to innovate, to grow business, and to create jobs. This competitive objective will be the one, I think, that will impact most the citizens of Europe. And as we were saying, as my two predecessors said, it's that relationship between Europe and the citizens that's so important. We will look to work on single market, on reducing unnecessary barriers, and on the green and digital transitions. In terms of values, Ireland recognises that a shared set of fundamental values are the bedrock on which the European Union has been founded. It is important that we share the common outlook on the world and a common set of values. We operate in an area where those values are sometimes under discussion or under threat, but Europe has stuck to its values, and I think that's very, very important. A part of our values will be in the enlargement element, and I'll come back to that at the end. And then finally, Ireland will focus on security in many ways, as Cyprus has. The invasion of Ukraine, the instability in other parts of the world, the threats on critical infrastructure remind us that security can no longer be taken for granted, and that Europe it needs to be resilient, prepared, and capable of defending itself. Within the broader values framework, enlargement is an important objective for Ireland, and we want to see as many countries move up that accession line as possible. We as a country have benefited hugely from membership of the European Union. Actually, if we look back to 1973, we were considered to be the poorest country in Europe, or within the European Union. There were many members of the European Union, or the EEC as it was at the time, that didn't think that Ireland had the capacity or the ability to be a member of the European Union. But the membership has transformed our economy, but also our society over the last number of years, and being one of the most successful economies in Europe. So we want to see that spread to other countries based on their performance, based on their reforms, and we want to see, again, that relationship between Europe and the citizens strengthened. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think a lot of citizens of Serbia can relate to what you said concerning the importance of the values as the bedrock of the community, of the EU. Obviously, it's encouraging to see that the member states recognize the importance of not only geography, but rather values, because geopolitics is not exclusively about geography. It's about politics based on the values as well. And as Andreas von Becker had said, enlargement is about how to make Europe stronger. And those who obviously are not ready to respect the values are not going to be contributing to making Europe stronger. So we are moving forward. I would like to introduce Bojana Selakovic, coordinator of the National Convention on the EU. The National Convention under your presidency has gained a lot of presence in the public, has been included in numerous activities related to the EU accession process and all the open issues that Serbia is facing currently in this process. We earlier addressed the importance of Tivat summit and what it brings. How would you reflect on Serbia's position in relation to the summit and to the broader enlargement momentum? I will lend you my microphone, but you need to be strict with the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Srdjan, and thank you for inviting me today. Now it's a kind of the tradition. And also congratulations from my side to excellent Cyprus presidency period related to the enlargement. Of course, we are expecting that until the end of this year, we will keep this trend regarding both enlargement regions. When it comes to Serbia's position, I would say, usually use that formulation that it's always a kind of paradox, and Serbia lives between completely different several narratives or several realities when it comes to the EU, and that is also for us from civil society especially a huge challenge, taking into consideration broader perspective and this new enlargement momentum. Also when we are listening our government, their narrative is based on some additional requests from the side of the EU. They used to say that EU always raise standards for Serbia, etc. But from the side of civil society and some other internal actors, it looks that those standards actually decreased. And between these two parallel reality is actually the essence of the enlargement process. EU, member states, Commission, etc. And I think that this whole period is really, really intensive because there is no there is a kind of consensus between all actors relevant for the enlargement process, but I think that there is no consensus about how to reach to the objective, to the end of this path. And in that regard, consistency, communication between different EU actors sometimes is not understandable for all actors here in Serbia. And I think that that must be, of course, based to what Irish ambassador said. something that should be definitely a crucial point in the future. That kind of discrepancy between Commission and Member States is actually a first line that made some kind of confusion when it comes to Serbia. But also, we all know that our government already use a kind of different narratives and discrepancies in their own reactions toward EU. And at the end of that are citizens of Serbia who are completely confused, not only with government messages, with different kinds of completely opposite narratives from the same centers, but also when they are listening different messages from different EU actors. So when it comes to some recommendation for the next period, I think that that should be in focus. Also, some of those non-papers, recent non-papers also recognize that need for more coordination and harmonization between Commission and especially Member States when it comes to position toward enlargement. And also one important thing when it comes to Serbian citizens, we are completely and fully aware of the situation and the emergency of the momentum, and I think that you all know that civil society organizations maybe were the only sincere and real pro-EU actor in this society without any other interest related to it. And civil society organizations are the only actor here in Serbia that are not instrumentalized EU accession process for the internal political purposes. And in that regard, we are in position of a kind of translator now between merit-based approach and geopolitical perspectives. Sergeant mentioned something about that. So in that regard, what we are doing these days is to convince, to explain to citizens, to all other actors that in the times when geopolitics has actually a priority, then merit-based approach is a bit flexible. And for the end, I would actually like to ask all of you, you who are now in Serbia, also your colleagues in Brussels, to help us with that and to have consistent messages about that. So if there is a need to communicate about geopolitics, then let's be sincere toward the citizens, toward public, not only in Serbia, but also in other countries. When merit-based approach should be in focus, then let's be consistent about the criteria for merit-based approach. Otherwise, situation is becoming more confused. Something also for us when we are in situation to defend some positions or decisions related to enlargement.
Thank you very much, Bojana, for being honest and open concerning the importance of having a precise and objective messages. Because, yes, I understand the point that you raised. Sometimes it's quite confusing how to explain the complexity of the current enlargement environment and the context in which it takes place, and to make it easy to understand to a broader society. But we will touch upon this in the second round. So far, I have to praise the panelists. They are all very disciplined and within the proposed time limit. Now I would move to my dear colleague, Milena Mihajlović-Denić, a program director at the European Policy Center, and one of the authors of one of the major studies concerning how to move forward when it comes to unblocking the EU integration process. And this is the stage accession model that was promoted together with our colleagues from CEPS in Brussels. We touched upon all these numerous non-papers which started by the letter of German Chancellor to concerning Ukraine, and then followed up by Friends of the Enlargement, to be again presented at Tivat as a common Franco-German proposal, and the Benelux paper as well that followed on the steps of that. So there are numerous proposals. It is obvious that there is a know-how, and I'm very proud that our organization contributed to this development of the European know-how, how to move forward. But to what extent these non-papers align with the work that you have done in your study? What are the novelties, and what are the maybe common grounds that we can start thinking to enable more efficient enlargement process in the future? Milena, please.
Thank you, Srđan, and I hope I live up to the standard of the rest of the panel in regards of the time, of course, and quality. I think that this recent wave of new proposals and non-papers is a good proof that nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. When we first published, my initial paper in 2018, which was called Away with Enlargement Boogeyman, and where basically I argued that the moment of accession, because of this binary nature of the process, where you're a non-member and you then almost overnight, I mean, we all know that it's not overnight, but with the accession into the EU, you gain all the benefits and start assuming all the obligations at the same time, that this was a very intimidating moment, especially, I mean, for the candidate countries as well, but especially for member states, and especially considering the experience of the last enlargements. And this is where we first argued that a more gradual approach should be adopted. And at that time, the idea was very new. It was not unknown, because there were in the past enlargements also some proposals, various papers, academic papers that were arguing similar things. But obviously, in those previous ways of enlargement, this kind of new machinery was not needed. And the enlargement process was, in that sense, much cleaner and much simpler. We now see that, of course, I mean, the process has been changed. The process has been adapting. And as always, the enlargement policy is a policy which has really adapted to the realities and which has learned a lot from its past experiences. And this is why today we have this complete consensus, not only among member states, but also in the candidate countries, that this gradual approach is the way to go. That obviously in a situation where reforms are difficult, where there has been a lot of procrastination in the process, a lot of reform fatigue, that there is a need now to offer incentives which are going to really push the candidate countries to assume as many obligations as possible, as early as possible in the process, but also to get as many incentives as possible and to strengthen this relationship between the EU and the candidate countries on the way. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, because through our work on the staged accession model, we have advocated, we have visited 25 out of 27 member states since 2023. So we have done a lot of arguing, a lot of advocacy, a lot of discussions with officials from both EU institutions and member states institutions to try to present these ideas. And obviously a lot of these ideas are now returning through these new non-papers. What we definitely didn't expect would be that, you know, this kind of a nice model that we created would be implemented 100% in this very structured way with the 4 stages, etc. But what we do see now is that the essence of those ideas is practically either already being implemented or on the way to become part of enlargement policy, because obviously these new non-papers, we will see what will be implemented and what will not be implemented. We know that the Commission is supposed to issue a proposal, a formal proposal in October this year, if I'm not mistaken, and then we will see actually what will be the consensus among the member states. But the most important elements are already kind of getting this consensus. We already have a consensus and we already have implementation on the financial incentives side of the story. So the EU has already realized that a stronger financial push and economic integration push for the candidate countries is absolutely necessary, because as a result, partly as a result of the huge trade deficit that this region has with the EU needs to invest more into the region to help it catch up with the EU before we can even start thinking about becoming members. We need to start catching up. So the growth plan is there. We hope that in the next MFF, this kind of mechanism will be even larger and even more substantial, because now we're all kind of in the learning phase. The countries are not even implementing, and withdrawing all the money that they do already have at their disposal. But as everybody learns in this process, I hope that the next MFF will bring an opportunity to provide an even bigger push. The institutional integration is also something that is gaining more and more ground. So we see now that the new proposals are arguing for the first time for merit-based access to the formations of the Council and a deeper integration with the work of the EU bodies and EU institutions, which we also argued as part of the staged accession model, that is a necessary element to provide an incentive, but also a learning curve for the candidate countries. And then sort of the most sensitive and the most interesting part is what will happen after accession, and what are the safeguards that the EU will put in place in order to ensure that it can continue to function properly, and that its values continue to be upheld, and that new EU member states don't backslide on some key commitments after accession. This is where I expect that there will be more of an arguing and more of a discussion also among member states, and that there will be more pushback also among the candidate countries. Maybe not so much on the safeguard clauses, which now it's completely clear will have to be much more thorough and robust than they were in the previous enlargements. We also published a very detailed paper on that last year, and that paper has to a great extent been reflected in these new papers. But I think that the most controversial part will be the potential limitations of veto rights, which were flagged as a point of discussion in the Benelux paper. This is the first time we see that as even an element mentioned in a proposal coming from member states. This is where I think the political will in the candidate countries and in the member states will have to align at some point to find a place of consensus. But I think we have some great food for thought. We have created a marketplace of ideas, and now we have to move forward towards actually finding the best formula to move the process further along.
Thank you very much, Milena. I fully agree. I think two major components present in all the papers is that enlargement, or rather three. Enlargement is going to happen. Enlargement is real. It's open. It's not about second-grade membership, but it's a full membership on board. Second, it's about the merit-based. So if you progress, what Ambassador Fotiu was saying, if you progress, then EU is going to reward that achievement. But the third element is also very important, and this is that there is a reversibility element. If the country does not perform well, and if it does not contribute to this strengthening of the EU core, that it can also be stopped in this process. Now we are entering the second phase of our discussion, and we will reshuffle a bit the order. So perhaps I would start with Ambassador Fotiu. During the presidency, the debate over the destiny of the Serbia's Cluster 3 opening was very much alive. Looking specifically at Serbia, where do you see the main bottleneck? There are 2 points of view, 2 perspectives. On the side of the EU, the mastering of unanimity among the member states can be very difficult and can hamper the process. Or is it more focused on Belgrade side and in the lack of delivering on the rule of law reforms and foreign policy alignment? How do you see this quite a complex and not easy to explain conundrum?
Yeah, thank you. With regards to Serbia, I would avoid framing the issue as a choice between obstacles on the EU side or on Serbia's side. I think both dimensions matter, and this is what we are trying to do, always as in the capacity, of course, of the presidency. In the end of the day, enlargement decisions require unanimity among the member states, and that unanimity is built on confidence that the accession criteria are being met. This is how it is, and this is how the Council has approached this issue. The expectations, on the other hand, are well known. They relate, among other things, to the rule of law, judicial independence, media freedom, fight against corruption, alignment with the CFSP, just to name a few of the criteria. Of course, these are not new conditions. They are part of the agreed accession framework and apply equally and have applied equally to all candidate countries. The EU, for its part, has consistently reaffirmed that Serbia's future lies within the Union. And this we say as presidency, but also as Cyprus, as we are one of Serbia's closest friends, traditionally, with very, very strong bonds of friendship that go back in time. There is a broad recognition of Serbia's strategic importance for the Western Balkans and for Europe as a whole. And it is the position of the EU that Serbia's place is within this family, provided, of course, that all conditions will be met. At the same time, progress depends on tangible and sustained reforms that will inspire the necessary confidence among all member states. We are encouraged by recent new initiatives or reforms that have taken place in the area of judicial legislation, I mean, with the Venice Commission, the electoral law. We look forward to implementation, of course, and also for continued reforms, especially in the area of media freedom and further CFSP alignment. As presidency, our role has been to facilitate the discussions in an impartial manner and to keep the enlargement process moving forward. And now, as we hand over to our Irish friends, this is a process that, of course, is active and open, and but it has clear expectations. And the expectation is that we will see also in Serbia continued reform efforts and constructive engagement that will create the conditions for further progress, and hopefully within the next presidency we will be able to register this progress. You mentioned it before, and also Andreas, the roaming like at home issue wasn't easy at the beginning of our presidency. But now we managed to have unanimity within the Council, and the Commission has the negotiating mandate and will advance now the negotiations, something that will bring concrete benefits to the citizens and businesses. Ultimately, we think enlargement is a shared responsibility. The EU must, of course, remain credible in honoring its commitments, and this is what I meant before when I said that the EU delivers. And of course, the candidate countries must remain equally credible in delivering the reforms they have undertaken to implement. This balance is essential for the success of the accession process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Milena, coming back to you, CEP's recent public opinion research points to a striking three-way split among Serbian public on the EU membership, but also to the credibility deficit that shapes perceptions of the EU itself and support to the EU membership. At the same time, enlargement is increasingly framed, as we learned, even today confirmed, through the geopolitical and security lenses, while domestic support in Serbia to the EU accession remains very fragmented. So based on this study, on this research, what recommendations would you offer to the EU to help address this credibility gap that sometimes occur and make the enlargement process more tangible and convincing to Serbian citizens, citizens of Serbia?
Well, the recommendation is clear, but it is absolutely not simple and it is not easy to implement. And the recommendation is that the EU should really be careful to uphold its values as much as possible, even in this geopolitical moment in its relations with Serbia. And I will just give an example. When the acts through which the government has undone the damage that it had previously created itself in the EU accession process, when those acts are framed as reforms, and then when the EU accepts that framing, it is the EU's credibility which takes the hit with the Serbian population. And this is what is driving support for EU accession downwards. And when we are trying to communicate these findings, and I really invite everybody here in the room to go to our website and to read the new policy brief, Geopolitics and Values in Tension or in Tandem, we did a very serious statistical simulation through which we showed how this credibility mechanism operates in Serbia. And we showed that it operates mainly for citizens who are normally, according to their values, according to how they express themselves in this representative survey, citizens who are most naturally pro-European. So the government's supporters in this country, only 25% of them support EU accession, only 25%. Among the opposition, student-aligned and more liberal and cosmopolitan neutral citizens, politically neutral citizens, this percentage is over 50%. So for the EU, I think the message is clear. You should know where your allies are in this country and who are your natural supporters. At the same time, for those government-aligned respondents in our study, the credibility mechanism doesn't function. So basically, they see an economic benefit from potential EU accession, and they support the EU because of that. Or they support it because they align with what the formal policy of the government is. But the 75% of their voter base who are not supporting the EU are clearly showing the results of what my colleagues have previously said about these paradoxical narratives and parallel narratives we're living in, because the voters of the ruling parties are confused. So only 25% of them actually support what the president and the government is formally proclaiming. This is one extremely important message. The second extremely important message is that this credibility mechanism actually shows that when the EU is seen, perceived by the Serbian population as sacrificing or somehow accepting the violations of its values to drive or to force some geopolitical or economic interests, that this erodes the credibility of the EU in their minds, and this is then what drives their support for EU membership down. And of course, I mean, we should not be pessimistic, because these people are the people who naturally and truly want the EU. So there is a huge space to return the hearts and minds of those people. But the EU must tread carefully there. And it is extremely important that in this very difficult and very sensitive geopolitical moment, when we understand, of course, especially we in this room understand that the EU needs to engage with the Serbian government, that the EU needs to find ways to continue a constructive relationship with the Serbian government. But we all need to be extremely careful about how we communicate those decisions, how they are framed and how they're perceived by the Serbian population. Because if the EU says says, yes, we're opening cluster 3 because you see, we've had all these reforms now. Well, the Serbian people will not buy it because they know that these are the reforms which are just undoing the damage that was done in the previous years. So when we speak about reforms, we need to be very careful about what we are speaking about, and when we are communicating the decisions, the probably very justified decisions to open cluster 3 or to disburse funds from the Reform and Growth Facility, despite the fact that we live in a criminalized state, criminalized society, where rule of law has gone to sleep a long time ago. We need to be careful how we communicate that to the Serbian people, because this is actually the EU's present, not to the Serbian government. It must not be seen as a present to the Serbian government, but as the EU's present to the Serbian people, as an investment into the relationship between the EU and the Serbian people. And of course, as Bojana said, we all need to be a little bit pragmatic and understand that in this kind of a geopolitical environment, the merit-based approach needs to be a little bit more flexible. But if we are more flexible now, if we say, okay, we should open all clusters. I mean, in the initial stage of the accession proposal, we actually proposed exactly that. Open all clusters at the beginning of the process. Structure the relationship. Don't use and insist on the conditionality for the opening of the clusters. Insist on it for the closing of the chapters. Insist on it on the, for the interim benchmark assessment. These are the moments to really push on the conditionality, especially on rule of law and democracy. So there is a way to wiggle out of this credibility problem in Serbia, but I think that communication has to be extremely careful, because if not, we will have the same situation which we had in 2021 when Cluster 4 was opened, and when the EU was actually seen as somehow rewarding the government for all the bad things because of which the citizens were protesting in the streets. Instead of actually showing and clearly communicating to the Serbian people, well, the Serbian people are protesting because of environmental worries, because of environmental concerns. Here, we're opening Cluster 4 because we want to invest in that relationship. We want to make sure that Serbia upholds the EU environmental standards as early as possible, and this is why we want to enter those negotiations as soon as possible. I really believe that this is the way to go. I think that our policy briefs offers very clear and very nuanced recommendations for the EU, and we are very willing to engage on this, because we are not doing these kinds of research to criticize the EU. You know, this is not the point. We want to help the EU salvage its image in Serbia, because I want my son to be able to study. He's supposed to start studying in 2 years. And now as a mother, I am devastated to see that he cannot study in the EU, for example, at a Dutch university where he would really love to study. He cannot study as an EU student with a very small tuition fee, but he has to pay an international third country tuition fee, which we cannot afford. And I started doing this job over 20 years ago, and I was absolutely certain at that time that by the time that my kids start schools and universities, that they will be able to study anywhere in the EU according to the same rules and same tuitions as EU students. But we are not there yet, 2 decades later. So this is what we need to invest in, this relationship with the people. This is where EU's power lies in Serbia, not in the regime and in those offices.
Thank you very much, Milena, for this candid and very, very open intervention. I have nothing to add to what you said. Bojana, Milena just pointed out this credibility deficit that sometimes occur, and fragmented public mood towards the EU. What role can the National Convention on the EU play in closing this credibility gap and making accession process more understandable and tangible for citizens? And moreover, do you feel that civil society's voices and viewpoints, recommendations that we make, are generally taken into account by our European partners, or are there some different practices?
Yeah, thank you. Well, as I mentioned during the first round, significant part of our work today is about this kind of translation of the geopolitical aspects of the enlargement process, but also I would say another part of our work is a kind of managing of expectations among different actors here. Because following what Milena said, I would like to confirm that we are witnessing a new group of disappointed citizens toward EU in Serbia. They were pro-EU oriented, but currently their perception of EU positions towards some reform activities in Serbia are disappointed for them. And now they need some explanation. And what we are doing, me personally, I'm very active also in media, in social media, in order to explain all those aspects that we mentioned. At the same time, some civil society organizations that were part of some reform agenda-related processes actually paying very strong price for that. CERTA, civic initiatives, other organizations that participated in REM process have been criticized for participating in institutional processes. And the reason for such strong sentiment is related to polarization, very strong polarization that actually has reached to the point where defending the integrity of the accession process is often interpreted as taking someone's political side. So now EU accession process, unfortunately, is instrumentalized by different actors without actually understanding of the essence of the process, but also without understanding of the enlargement momentum, and that is actually space where I think only civil society organizations or platform like National Convention that's gathering a huge number of organizations, a kind of umbrella network, actually can be visible. I noticed that some of my colleagues from some individual organizations are not so free to speak publicly, to strongly advocate as they were doing in the past. Sometimes it is related with the really complex momentum and all these aspects of the enlargement process, but sometimes they are very concerned about their own reputation in this very dynamic domestic environment with strong polarization, with strong crisis that actually lasted for almost 2 years. So in that regard, as I also mentioned and Milena mentioned, we are continuing to explain what is actually going on, and when it comes to that very specific part of communication. So sometimes we have to defend some statements. For example, Marta Kosi is actually the best example, because so many people in Serbia now are focused on what Marta Kos is saying about Serbia on X, and some people unfortunately thinks that Serbia is center of EU politics and the center of the enlargement process, and that all EU officials actually thinking constantly about Serbia. And that is also one very specific aspect where our role is very important. And in that regard, I would really like to express my appreciation for the dialogue that we have with all EU actors, starting with Andreas, who is not so long here in Serbia, but I think that he really demonstrated one excellent recognizing of all specificities of Serbia, and especially expressed the importance of and recognized the importance of the role of civil society, and also thanks to that we have also very dynamic and intensive communication with other EU actors, starting from the highest level, and I think that it is not situation in any other region country that civil society actually is recognized as such important actor related to the enlargement process. So of course it's not always easy, but I think that open communication that we have actually really worked, and especially for us. Because when some EU actors recognize our role, then it is a kind of protection for us in public space to be very open and clear about some not always pleasant explanations and interpretations of the process.
Thank you very much, Bojana. Unfortunately, the very fact that Serbian civil society organizations need to be protected by being recognized as interlocutors, as credible interlocutors, shows and describes the environment in which civil society in Serbia operates. Ambassador von Beckerath, we recently got the chance to meet with President Costa, but also with other leaders, and he pointed out to December 2026. By the way, this is going to be the end of Irish presidency, maybe as the last real opportunity for Serbia to use the current political window of opportunity to achieve the concrete breakthrough in the accession process. How would you find it realistic concerning this deadline, and what needs to happen now to ensure the opportunity is not missed? And obviously you're very much welcome to address the points raised by Milena and Bojana, because as they said, it is about the credibility, it is about the values. It's not exclusively about free roaming. It's not exclusively about SEPA, but if you have the institutions which are not capable to protect the rule of law and implementation of the EU-related laws, this country has a problem, and we need to be open and sincere about it.
Thank you. This is slightly dangerous because I had the possibility to make the first intervention, then I had to wait now almost 1 hour and listening to so many smart and wise remarks that I need to comment on. So I can't promise I will be as disciplined. Yes. No, I mean, a few things I wanted to pick up on. First, just to respond to what Bojana said, and it really is the case that we recognize the incredibly important role that civil society plays in this country. Not least when it comes to its expertise in different fields, but also the fact that you don't have a hidden agenda. You want Serbia really to progress on the EU path. And that is why you're such an important stakeholder and important partner to us. When it comes to the discussion about the merit-based character of the accession process, I mean, the EU is often criticized on the one hand by authorities that believes this is by no way a merit-based process because you are treating Serbia much tougher than Montenegro, Albania, and other countries. This is a very un-merit-based process. You're being too tough on us. And then we're being criticized by you and by people in opposition saying, no, this is by no means a merit-based process because you're being far too lenient on Serbia, and you're not being, you're not sticking up to your principles and values. So I think I don't really, I can't see where we would be in order for everyone to say, yes, this is a perfect merit-based process. It is a merit-based process, for sure. And I agree with your 4 points where all member states agree, one of which is that the enlargement process, even though there is a discussion on how to sort of reinvigorate the process, it will continue to be merit-based. There is 100% consensus among member states. But it will always be subject to interpretation whether or not conditions, merits have been achieved. And that discussion will continue, but it will be a merit-based process. Now, when it comes to what you said, Bojana, I think it's an important point, the fact that, of course, I would love to have only, all member states, all EU officials reading from the exact same hymn sheet, saying the exact same things. It would make my life so much easier, believe me. But that is not the character of the European Union, and it never will be. And I think it's a strength that we have 27 member states with slightly different views on a lot of different issues. And they will always speak their mind in a way which doesn't 100% correlate to what other member states are saying, what institutions are saying. But I think given that sort of the fact that we are 27 member states, I think we're remarkably well in communicating the same message. And I always, advise people to read and look at our annual report. That is, the blueprint for our assessment and what we expect Serbia to do. And that, I think, member states also agrees that that is really the Bible of the enlargement process. Then on Bojana, I think you made also, interesting points, including on Commissioner Koss' communication. Commissioner Koss, myself, President von der Leyen, all of EU representatives have been crystal clear on, the importance of Serbia adhering to our values, not least when it comes to enabling environment for civil society, for independent journalists, constantly bringing up the importance of safety of journalists. I think we've been very clear and often quite critical also of the authorities, the way they've acted. But in order to preserve our credibility and our balance, we also have to give credit where credit is due. And just because that we are saying that, it's a good thing that 4 laws were adopted by Parliament which adheres to the ODA recommendations, just because we think that's an important step, does that mean that we think that the electoral framework is perfect, nothing more needs to be done? No. First of all, the laws needs to be implemented and more needs to be done. But we have to be able to give credit where credit is due. And the same goes for the Venice Commission opinion. We believe it's an important step in correcting the laws that were adopted in January. We think that's an important step. Does that mean that we believe that this constitutes a perfect rule of law system at the moment? No, it's basically that's correcting laws that were adopted earlier this year. But I think the environment is so polarized. So every time we criticize or we give credit, we are being criticized by some party. And I really take Milena's point on the importance of communication, that we really need to improve our game, or up our game when it comes to communicating the opening of clusters, for example. I mean, if cluster 3 is to be opened, which the Commission has recommended since 2021, that is an opportunity for Serbia. That is an opportunity. It's 3 new chapters that are being opened. And it is to the benefit of the Serbian citizens, and the fact that if Serbia would be allowed to open cluster 3, it would also be, credit to all the stakeholders, because there are so many of these reforms that we're asking from Serbia, which includes the civil society, the opposition, and the ruling coalition. So I think we have to sort of not presented, I agree with you, not presented as sort of a gift to the Serbian authorities, but rather as a gift to the Serbian people. I think that is a very important point. When it comes to our communication, yes, I agree with you that if we are perceived as not standing up for our values, we will pay a price to the part of the Serbian population which is genuinely pro-EU and pro-European. So we have to be mindful of that. But the 75% voting for the ruling coalition, I don't think we can sort of forget about them. We need to convince them as well. And we need also the help of the authorities to convince them. And this is why it was so clearly stated in our annual report that we expect more from the authorities in terms of helping us to present objective, fact-based information on all of the benefits that Serbia receives during the accession process and also once being a full member. So I think, you know, it's both that we expect more from authorities, but I also think that we can improve our communication. Then to your questions, Serjan, I think, you know, when President Costa and other EU leaders are talking about deadlines, I think it's less of a, you know, hard stop 1st of January 2027. It's more about, you know, political realities. There is a momentum right now when it comes to enlargement. But will that window of opportunity remain open forever? No, it will not. You know, and that's why we're so eager for Serbia and other Western Balkan partners to seize the moment and really accelerate reforms right now, because now they will really be rewarded. And I think artificial deadlines, we can never work with artificial deadlines, because artificial deadlines, you know, it runs counter to the idea of having a merit-based process, firstly. Secondly, EU citizens, which needs to be in favor of enlargement, that is crucial. They will never accept if we say by this date we will have this many new member states. They will also continue to insist that the process needs to be merit-based. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for being very open and honest about the difficulty of being the EU ambassador in Serbia in general. But it's all the fun. But I think also it was very, very important to hear what Milana and Bojana said, because this is how I would say majority of pro-European Serbian citizens feel. And it is a question of different perspectives. Milana thinks about the perspective of her family, of her son, while perhaps in Brussels the perspective is a bit different and it's focused on some other priorities. And it's only normal that we have a different views on similar things. But I would like to remind all of us that it's not exclusively about the opening of the clusters. It's about the something called Copenhagen criteria as well. The negotiating frameworks of all the currently negotiating candidates have embedded this so-called the balance clause, which is based on the importance of rule of law for the overall implementation of everything that's negotiated. And when you say, when you see the cluster 10, where part of the media is positioned, where economic, social policy and employment is being placed, knowing how people are being basically blackmailed in Serbia on their working space to attend certain, government meetings. When you see that there are chapters 25 and 26 on science and education, these are all critical areas where we are facing serious backsliding in the essence. If you check the international indexes on all of these areas, you will see that Serbia is losing the track record when it comes to the progress. So this is what perspective of pro-European part of the society is focused on. And then it's very difficult to understand that, some formal step forward is being rewarded and knowing how this is going to be lauded out and as a big success of a government that basically breaches the values upon which this process is based. So this is the kind of a different perspective that we are facing, but I fully understand your position. At the end, it is only, I would say, natural to invite Ambassador Colgan to give us a couple of words on the incoming presidency. Well, usually in December there is a big enlargement sort of a focused council meeting, so there will be a lot of focus on this policy. But with that in mind, what would be the best way to capitalize on what we've seen in Tivat, on this yet another renewed commitment to the enlargement, and what would a successful Irish presidency look like for the Western Balkans by the end of December? I know it's not a polite question for the ambassador, and I know that you're not carrying around your crystal ball to see in the future, but do you see some positive developments when it comes to especially Serbia's EU accession process till the end of the year?
I think a successful presidency is that the Irish ambassador is alive on the 1st of January. But anyway, I was in Tivat last month, and I was lucky enough to be around the discussions on enlargement. And it's clear there's a real political momentum to move the European Union and to expand the European Union. I think the key thing is to build on that political momentum, is to do all the technical work, to do the reform, and move the process forward. I think Montenegro, hopefully we will be able to bring it forward. I think it will be a clear, if we are able to bring Montenegro forward, it will be a clear demonstration that the system works. We're able to bring more people in. I think from a Serbian point of view, Ireland has been a consistent, strong supporter of Serbia's future in the European Union. And based on our own experience, we know how Serbia will benefit from being a member of the European Union. We know how important Serbia is for this region, for its people, for the political momentum for the Western Balkans. There was one point that I wanted to make, that these percentages of whether people are in support of the European Union or not, Ireland had a long history of very strong support for the European Union since we joined, but we're also a country that rejected 2 European treaties. So my piece of advice to Serbia is to keep understanding, doing the research, understanding what the people think and what the issues are for them. Because if you just blindly go and assume that you understand what people think, you might be proved wrong. So my advice is to make sure you keep doing that research and keep understanding what are the key issues for the Serbian people and their relationship with the European Union. In terms of a successful presidency, bar me surviving it, movement on the key files, our objectives around competitiveness, around our values and around security, to continue the great work that Cyprus have done in terms of the MFF, for sure to get movement on the enlargement agenda, and then on the simplification, on EU-UK relations, which are very important for us, and making sure that the changes that we see in the next 6 months have an impact on the lives of our citizens in the European Union.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I'm very glad that we managed to finish exactly almost to the minute, because I know that you have the obligations. But I would like to kindly ask you perhaps to have at least one question from the audience and give them an opportunity to take part in this event. Are there any comments or brief questions? We have one over there. Okay. Sure. Aleksandar, molim samo kratko. Thank you.
Vrlo kratko. People in Serbia do not know anything about these things. You need to make new kind of free UDOM radio, free Europe radio. I'm not joking. They don't know anything. And other thing, last one, if EU demand for Serbia 3 things, and Serbia do only 2, there is no room for bravo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this was more of a comment, but I think it's very interesting because it fits into our discussion on the credibility. Because if the regime in Serbia is rewarded, then there is a question mark over how does this influence the Macedonian, the Montenegrin government, who just recently, or rather just yesterday, sentenced a former director of police for jail. So putting the sign of equality in the progress between those who are honestly progressing and those who are just faking it, I found it very, very, very problematic, I would say.
I can just respond briefly to, and thank you for that advice. I mean, I agree with you. We need to improve our communication, and we're constantly working on that. Next week, I will be doing a short road show, traveling to 3 smaller cities in Serbia, with the whole, idea and purpose of trying to engage with Serbian citizens. Not so much preach the EU gospel, but more to listen to Serbian citizens, listen to their concerns, and also try to engage with Serbian citizens, which are, among the 75% that Milena mentioned, that do not believe that Serbia's future lies within the EU. But when it comes to sort of the conditionality and opening of clusters, I still think that we have to keep, a few things in our heads at the same time. Just because we are giving credit on one issue, which we believe has been a step in the right direction, doesn't mean that we can the next day say that we're disappointed with other things. And the same goes for cluster opening, that just because we open one cluster, opening 3 chapters, if member states would decide so, again, I mean, this is up to member states, doesn't mean that we will not continue to follow all the areas when it comes to rule of law, media freedom, electoral framework, fight against corruption, academic freedom. That will be, we'll continue to follow that and speak up when we believe that there is, reason to be criticizing the situation in the country. So sometimes it's a bit simplified, this discussion, that just because we give credit on some issue, that we believe that everything is perfect. Thank you. I'm afraid I need to run.
Sure. Thank you very much. Join me in a round of applause saying thank you to our panelists. This panel discussion was recorded, and it will be available on the YouTube channel of European Policy Center. There are a lot of interesting topics that we addressed, and it would be good to catch up and on the major issues. Dear panelists, thank you very much for your contribution, and see you in December.